An assignment we have in class is called Theoretician Profile. Part of all communication theory, because there are so many, is actually the person who wrote that theory. What did they know? What conclusions did they come to? What was it part of their own personal biography that interested them in this study of communication? Where did that lead to? Now, we only have a short time, but usually we have somewhere around 20 students in the class. So if each student takes a profile of a different theoretician and then goes through and explains that, so the class can really read all 20 of those papers. And in addition to the paper and the background on the particular theoretician and helping build that foundation, the other part that provides is we can look at how that theory still continues to influence the field of communication, because students are not only expected to write the profile, but attach a contemporary example of how that research is still going on in the field. Or, on the other hand, if it was a dead end and that theory is no longer a useful theory to the field. Another assignment for the class is centered around a book that we use called Perspectives of Communication. Again, it goes back to this kind of concept of communication being a multidisciplinary field, but in fact that theories are always changing, and that what was a substantially good theory at one point in time is no longer considered very useful, or even maybe a backward way of looking at it. We can all think of theories that are no longer useful. Flat Earth theory. We might say, well, that was an interesting kind of idea, but if you still are holding on to flat Earth theory, well, you don't really understand physics and gravity and so on. So the same is true for the field of communication. It has a very long history. It's one of the oldest disciplines in the academy, but in fact some of its theories are no longer that solid. So what's important for a class like 508 is not that you know every theory, but that you can learn how to think like a theorist and therefore create new theory. So we use a book called Perspectives on Communication because it is actually looking at some cutting-edge examples of trying to extend communication theory into contemporary society. So each team is assigned one of those perspectives. We don't do every perspective from the book, depends on the size of the class, but then teams are assigned one of those perspectives to sort of really help clarify what that perspective is about, and in a sense become teachers to the rest of the class about that particular subject. One of the major projects of the entire class is something I call the Communication Theory Think Tank Project, or the initials are CTTP. And the idea for me was I need students to learn how to work in a team, but I wanted them to look at some very serious social problem and apply communication to solving that problem. So very early in the course, after watching We Have a Table of Four ready, I asked the class to start generating a list of what they think are serious contemporary social problems. Not really narrow, refined problems, but general problems that we all see around us. As massive as poverty, all those things that we think maybe there's no solution to that problem. So the idea is just generate a list of problems. That's just getting the brain going. Later, after we go through a number of theories, we start to learn some of the traditions and the foundations, then they're put in teams, and the teams are to identify a social problem they want to construct new theory about in order to work at trying to solve that kind of problem. We have a range of kind of topics that students choose. Some of it's very contemporary. A few years ago, one of the teams picked the Hurricane Katrina. They tried to put together what happened there and try to theorize about why that happened and what could happen to avoid that again. And their paper was written for class, a project done, and they were asked to come to New Orleans to report on that very project that nobody had thought about Katrina as a communication problem. They had all sorts of other ideas what the reason Katrina happened and our slow response to it, but they didn't see how much of that problem was really communication centered. So the students were able to do that both by understanding communication theory, but generating new theory to respond in that kind of crisis situation. And that's really helpful for them both from a knowledge base, but also to start to think what we call meta-theoretically. What are those things they have to think about if they're going to apply this to a real world situation?